So I've been talking a lot about theme park video games and video game theme parks on this channel, and I promise I'm almost done. I've just got one more thing I need to do. A game I've mentioned but haven't really gone super in depth on in those videos are the two Epic Mickey games, because both of those games actually take a lot of inspiration from the Disney parks. I have talked about them before in a past video, but I'm gonna be honest, while I did enjoy making that video, it's not my best work. So since the remake of the first game just came out, I thought this would be a perfect time to look back at these two games to see if I still enjoy them, as well as to see if the new remake is any good. Alright, so I'm not trying to say that I'm some sort of prophet or that my videos with less than 1,000 views have any sort of effect on the video game industry, but what I will say, I make this video, they make this. I made this video, they made this. Most likely a pure coincidence, but if Skylanders comes back anytime soon, just remember this video. Epic Mickey Rebrushed was probably the biggest surprise of this year to me, because for all I knew, this series was dead and buried, and if Disney deems something unprofitable, it ain't ever coming back. But they did bring it back, and I gotta say, this is a pretty decent remake. The most noticeable change here is the visuals, and man, this game looks really good. This is way more than just an HD port, and you can tell so much effort went into making this game look as modern and fresh as they could. A lot of things have been changed here, but I wouldn't blame you if you didn't notice, because I didn't really either. Everything still looks like something that would have been in the original game, and I have to give them huge props for that, because the visuals are like 75% of what makes these games cool. I like that they still kept all of the 2D animated cutscenes, because I've always really liked those, and I think they fit the game very well. The other big additions in this remake are the 3 new moves Mickey can now pull off with the dash, ground pound, and sprint. The dash is probably the most notable out of the 3 because it allows you to do a lot of stuff that you couldn't in the original game. You can only use it when you're on the ground, but if you use the dash to launch yourself off of a platform, you still have both of your jumps and spin that you can use, allowing you to reach places you probably weren't able to in the original game. On top of that, it just feels good, so I in turn wanted to use it more. The ground pound is fine, but you really don't use it like ever. The game wasn't designed around having a ground pound, so it just doesn't have that many uses in the platforming, and since you attack enemies with paint or thinner for the most part, it's not really useful for that either. The game also wasn't designed around having the dash, but that move just sort of fit in a little better. Sprinting is the other big addition here, and yeah, it's nice since you can move a little faster, but it's really not that much faster, so I didn't find myself using it that often, and I just forgot about it most of the time. But I'm not here just to talk about all the new changes in the remake, I also just want to see if I still enjoy the game in general. So this game is a 3D platformer. I'm sure you've already gathered that by now. But unlike most 3D platformers, this game isn't a collectathon. Most other 3D platformers have you going after some big collectibles like stars or whatever, but in this game, while you do have some minor collectibles like tickets and pins, most of the progression in the game is just based on the story. You don't go to the Haunted Mansion level because you have enough collectibles to go there, you just do it because that's where the story wants you to be. Since this game's focus isn't collectibles, it instead trades that in for a new idea, a morality system. I'm gonna be honest, most of the time when I hear somebody say a game has a morality system, it kinda makes me want to run the other way. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of games that do it well, but most of those games are RPGs, which put a lot more emphasis on character interactions. When I think of morality systems in platformers, well, you have Epic Mickey, and that guy over in the corner. Morality systems in games like this that don't always have the highest budget always feel like they have to be greatly scaled back and never really live up to the original idea they were going for. All that being said though, I do think the morality system here works well enough for what it is. The basics of how this works is throughout the game you have paint and thinner you can use. While you will still use both in a good or bad playthrough, a lot of the big decisions, like how you deal with a boss or whether you decide to fix or break something, will depend on whether you use paint or thinner. You can also decide to either kill enemies with thinner or befriend them with paint, but from what I can tell, this doesn't really affect what moral path you go on. And then there's also the animatronic enemies that you just have to use thinner on. I pretty much just stuck to the paint path because I found it to be more fun, and I don't know, I just don't like it when all the cartoon characters are mad at me. But I think the part of this game that I've always loved the most is how the Disney parks are represented here. The game itself is more just about old and forgotten Disney characters like Oswald or this guy, but it all takes place in this weird half-destroyed version of Disneyland. All of the main areas you go to are all places that are based on lands or rides like Haunted Mansion, Tomorrowland, Pirates of the Caribbean, and a bunch more. I think the moment that really lets you know what you're getting into with this game is when you fight the clock from It's a Small World while it's playing a weird, creepy version of the music from the ride. You can tell that the people working on this game definitely had a love for the parks, which I can really appreciate. I feel like this game represents the parks better than like any of the games I talked about in my Disney Parks games video, and that's not even the main focus of the game. Even areas like Mickey Junk Mountain, which is already cool on its own with all the weird old Mickey Mouse merchandise scattered everywhere, has ties to the park. The whole area is actually based on the Matterhorn bobsleds from Disneyland, except the whole mountain got covered in old Mickey junk. This area also has one of the coolest Easter eggs in the game to me. You can find this random basketball hoop inside of some room with a chest in it. It took me a second to realize what this was because it didn't really serve any purpose. Then I finally figured out that it was a reference to the fact that there is actually a basketball hoop inside of the actual Matterhorn ride that some employees put there. It's such a deep cut reference that most people playing the game won't get, but stuff like that is exactly why I like this game. I would say that my favorite area in the game is probably Tomorrow City, since I've always just liked Tomorrowland, even if it sucks. The only area that isn't really based on anything is the final part of the game where you're inside the Blot, who is the main antagonist of the game, and even then this area is still really cool, so I don't even really care that it's not based on anything. Also, I think the Blot is a really cool villain for this game. I kind of wish he was in it more, since the way things are now, he kind of just shows up at the beginning and then the end. Same goes for the other antagonist with the Mad Doctor. I wasn't really going to mention him, but he's going to come back up later, so yeah. But back to some things I didn't really like that much. We have the quest system. I'm not saying that I don't want side quests. I actually really enjoyed the side quests in this game. My problem with them though is that with a lot of them, you just get locked out of finishing them once you reach a certain point in the game. There's no real warning of it either. You just go check your quest list and it's like, oh, I guess I can't do that one anymore. The same goes for a lot of the areas in the game. You just get locked out of them for no real reason. It just makes completing quests more annoying than it needs to be because you can't really decide to move on with the story for a little bit and then go back and do some quests or extra objectives. You instead just have to do them when the game wants you to, and the game doesn't really tell you when that is. The game does have a New Game Plus option, which is useful for going back and doing things you missed the first time, but I think I would just like it more if I could more easily do it in one run through. Another problem I had with the game that remains unfixed here is the projectors. The projectors are how you travel from area to area in the game, and for the most part, I do like them. They have their own collectibles to go for, and they offer fun little 2D levels based on old Disney cartoons. The main problem I have with them is that if you are going back and forth between areas, which this game has you do a lot, you have to replay these projector levels every single time you travel through them. All they really needed to do to fix this is just give you an option to skip the level if you've already beaten it. I could kind of excuse it in the original game, but it's still here in the remake, which is just kind of annoying. In fact, a lot of the problems with the game just aren't fixed here. I appreciate the new additions, the really nice looking graphics, and the ability to play this game without a Wiimote and nunchuck, but I also just feel like they could have done a little more to make the experience just that little bit better. Overall though, I still really enjoyed my time with this game and would definitely recommend it if you enjoy platformers or weird Disney history. But would I tell you to buy this over like Astrobot or Echoes of Wisdom, which are both the same price? No. So for this video, I wanted to go back and play both of these games. Problem is though, Epic Mickey 2 doesn't really have a remake or anything to level the playing field with these two games, so I did the best I could and got the Steam release of the game so I could play it on more modern hardware and get as close to a remaster as I could. Obviously, this game doesn't have the new stuff that was added in Rebrushed, like the new moves or graphics, but it does run and play well, so what more can I ask for? This game has always sort of been a controversial one, as a lot of people saw it as a pretty big letdown, and I can kind of see where they're coming from. In my opinion, this game is kind of just more of the same, which includes more of the same problems. plus a few new ones. But at the end of the day, if you like the first game, I don't really see why you would dislike this one, but I could maybe see why you would be disappointed. One weird thing I ran into with this game is the camera controls. They're fine and much better than the Wii version, but it's still kinda weird because instead of just aligning your aim with the camera like Rebrushed does, this game has it to where you still move your pointer with the left stick, but then once you keep moving it, then it moves the camera. It's weird and not ideal, and I don't even know if I did a good job of explaining it, but I got used to it, so it's fine, I guess. So finally on to the content of the actual game. One thing that really stood out to me was just how many new collectibles there were. We have the tickets and pins returning from the last game, but now we also have these materials like cloth and metal that can be used in basically the same ways tickets were. You just use them to repair things, do side quests, and sometimes buy stuff with them. I feel like it would have just been better to have tickets do all of these things, or just not have this in the game because I feel like it just overcomplicates things. We also have costumes, which act as another collectible that you can either find around the world or buy at a store. I actually really liked this edition because it was just something fun to go for that also gave you little abilities that didn't change up the game that much but could be useful. They brought the costumes back in Rebrushed, but they don't have any bonuses, and only 2 of them can actually be unlocked in the game, and the other 3 are locked behind a paywall. Thanks, Disney. Another collectible we have now are the hidden Mickeys and Oswalds. These are basically just random parts of the world that resemble the classic Mickey emblem or Oswald. These are fine and a neat reference to the parks, but I did kind of find them annoying to look for, so I just didn't most of the time. I also forgot to mention that there is a new type of enemy with the Blotworks, which are just a combination of the animatronic and blot enemies from the first game. I think they're a fun new addition, and I don't really have that much to say about them. But the main thing here that makes this game stand out from the first is the addition of Oswald as a playable character. Kinda. This makes a whole lot of sense because Oswald was one of the most memorable parts of the first game, since that game is basically the whole reason that character ever came back. Still crazy to me that Disney traded a real guy to get the rights to Oswald back, but as far as how Oswald is actually implemented here, it could be a lot better. Clearly, this game wants you to play it in co-op, which is probably pretty fun, but the problem is that co-op does not work for the PC version of the game. This isn't a huge deal to me, since I probably would have just played it single player anyway, but it's just strange to me that one of the biggest features of the game is just inaccessible in the most accessible version of the game. Since the game was designed around co-op, there is a lot of stuff that only Oswald can do, which would be fine if it were easy to use Oswald, but it's not really. Instead of just allowing you to switch between the 2 characters whenever you want in single player, you instead just have a button that calls Oswald over, and you just kind of have to hope he does what you want him to. He works fine like 75% of the time, but man, that other 25% really sticks out. I just find it to be a really weird decision that you don't even have the option of playing as him in single player, because I think that would have worked a lot better and just been more fun. It's fine and I can deal with it, but it's still just a weird, frustrating thing that doesn't need to be here. The whole morality system returns from the first game, which makes sense since that was a very big part of the game. I was sort of hoping that some improvements would be made to it here, but honestly I think it's kind of worse. I found it way more confusing to figure out what the good and bad option was for most of the choices in the game. Some of them are still pretty clearly laid out, but sometimes I would do something thinking it was my only option, just for the game to tell me that I did something bad. They also brought back the time-sensitive quests, which haven't really gotten any better. The main one I remember was where you could repair train stations before they fell apart, except one time I thought I had repaired one of them because the game didn't tell me I had to do anything else, then I came back later to it completely falling apart. Another problem that went unfixed was having to constantly go back and forth in the projectors to go places. Just like in the first game, I like these sections fine enough when going through them once or twice, but having to do it every time you want to go somewhere you've already been is just really annoying. One of the things I liked about the projector levels was collecting the film reels, but they've kind of ruined that for me in this game because they just way overcomplicated it. All of the projector levels have 2 sides to them now, I'm assuming for co-op reasons. My problem with that though is that now to get all of the film reels, you usually have to play through both sides, which I just didn't really want to do. If you're playing co-op, you could just split up the work, but in single player, I don't think the CPU can even pick them up, so that's nice. Another big addition here is that all of the characters have proper voice acting now, which I do like for the most part. I don't like it that much when the little tutorial helper guy won't stop talking while I'm trying to do something, but other than that, it's a welcome addition. The Mad Doctor returns in this game, except now he is the main villain instead of just a guy who shows up for 2 seconds. They try to have it be like a mystery on whether or not he is the bad guy, but they also make it really obvious that he is the bad guy. He also sings every line of dialogue he has, except for the final boss, but then after the final boss, he starts doing it again. So that's cool, I guess. Some of his songs are kinda catchy, so I mean, I didn't mind it that much. I think the funniest part about it, though, is that I guess they didn't really know what music to play in the credits, so they just started playing the Spanish version of one of the songs for no reason.
And Oswald did not know what challenges may lay ahead, but they were comforted by the knowledge that together they could conquer anything.
Just like the first game, most of the areas in this game are based on Disney park attractions. Pretty much all of the most popular ones were used in the last game, so instead of anything like Pirates of the Caribbean or Haunted Mansion, we have stuff like Autopia. Now, to me, I like this because it means we get to see more parts of the parks represented here, like Frontierland, which actually has a pretty cool area. I actually really like the Autopia area mentioned earlier since I just kind of like that attraction, so it was cool to see it in the game. The one weird decision here is that now Mean Street, which acts as the hub for both of the games, has been split into 2 areas for no real reason. There's a story reason as to why, but when you're playing the actual game, it's just annoying, so I don't really know why they did it. I do like this game, but just not as much as the first one. It feels like this game just got so focused on expanding and adding new things rather than fixing some of the problems that were already there, and in turn, it just adds more problem and makes the experience a little frustrating at points. But I did still enjoy it, and I would recommend getting it if you can find it on sale on Steam for like $5 like I did. If you're expecting a sequel that's anything more than just more of the first game, I would say it's probably better that you just skip out on this one. So after finally revisiting these games, I can say for sure that I still really enjoy this series. It has its fair share of problems, but at the end of the day, I think it's one of the most interesting things Disney has done in a long time. But now they've remade the game, and it's gotten fairly positive reviews, so I'm hoping maybe the series could have another remake, or maybe a whole new entry. On paper, it seems like remaking Epic Mickey 2 would be the next logical step, and while I want that to happen, since I do like that game, and I think it has a lot of problems that need to be fixed, I'm not sure if they would want to do that or not, since that game was not very well received and didn't do too well sales-wise either. So to me, whether or not that's going to happen is pretty up in the air. As far as a full new game, I would obviously love to see that happen, and a similar thing did happen with the Battle for Bikini Bottom remake that was made by the same developers of Rebrushed. That remake did well enough that they eventually just got to make a full original game that pretty much acted as a sequel. If that does happen, I have no clue what direction they would take. But if it were up to me, I think they should base the game on a whole different Disney park other than Disneyland or Magic Kingdom. I get why they did that with the first 2 since there is a lot to go off of there, but I think basing the 3rd game off of a park like Epcot would be really fun to see. They could have a bunch of levels based on all the closed or operating pavilions in Future World. You have the entirety of World Showcase you could use. I think it would make for a very cool game. Even if they make an Epic Mickey 3, they probably won't do my idea at all, but that's what I want to see. But no matter what happens from here, I'm pretty happy that we ended up at least getting Rebrushed, and I'm also happy that I decided to replay these games because I genuinely do really enjoy them. I'm not playing the 3DS one though. That one sucks.